My husband is a division manager at a major corporation. Quite a different world from yours, a middle school dropout, right? Linda, who was my classmate in middle school, said this to me after we had exchanged various words. Upon hearing this, I replied, "Well, he's getting fired tomorrow, you know." "What?" Linda uttered in surprise, turning her gaze towards her husband Mike, who was present. This created a scenario where a woman who had spoken rudely to me without knowing my true identity was now aware of her husband's impending dismissal. For Mike, who was unaware of the situation, this exchange must have been quite a shock. However, it was necessary to draw out the true feelings of the troublemaker who had been causing many people distress. As a result of our act, Mike, who misunderstood that he was being fired, began to dig his own grave with his subsequent actions. My name is Jack. I'm a 32-year-old man with a dream of living surrounded by a large family. I rent an apartment near downtown and live alone while working. I'm the CEO of a major corporation with about 7,200 employees. However, our company's employee count is not particularly high compared to other famous companies of the same scale. We have always focused on quality over quantity, which is why we have fewer employees compared to other major corporations. We are often underestimated by others, but our commitment to meticulous work and a customer-first philosophy has led to the company's rapid growth in recent years. Consequently, we plan to increase our workforce soon. Both my secretary Lisa and I are on the verge of being overwhelmed by the workload, so it seems unavoidable. The business is to the point where there's barely any time to rest. However, when I occasionally talk about my past, people are surprised. As a child, I was not an outstanding student. I was average in both academics and sports, and I wasn't a friendly type with many friends. So, in middle school, I thought I would just get a job at some company and live a normal corporate life. But, as a hobby, I started streaming videos, introducing interesting games, and doing playthroughs, which received a lot of responses from people. I decided to pursue that path. I developed simple gaming and learning apps and tried selling them, which became a big hit. Before I knew it, the company had grown significantly. So, when I meet classmates who knew me when I had to drop out of school in middle school, everyone is surprised. Of course, I am too. There was a time when both my parents were injured, and we temporarily fell into poverty. I never thought I would become a CEO back then. As the chill of winter began to ease, I drove my car, observing the swelling buds on the cherry trees, and headed to work. I parked my car in the parking lot and headed into the company with the other employees. Those around me yawning or engaged in small talk probably have no idea that I'm the CEO. I rarely show my face in front of the employees, so it's understandable. In a normal company, it would be unheard of for employees not to know their CEO's face. But our company is only a few years old, and I prefer to work rather than act as a typical CEO. So this is the situation. Back when I was an ordinary employee at a toxic company, I couldn't have imagined this. Distressed by my job at a toxic company, I resigned. Shortly thereafter, I chose to start my own business. Running the company isn't always smooth, but there's a lot of fulfillment, so I don't regret my past decisions. As I walked through the office corridors thinking this, I reached my office and noticed that my 20-something secretary wasn't there. I have a secretary named Lisa who helps me with my work, but she's been a bit under the weather for the past few days and is taking time off. She looked pale when I saw her yesterday, which worried me. If she's just not managing her health, I wouldn't be so concerned. I hope she's getting proper rest. I found myself muttering in concern for her, who wasn't here, as she looked quite unwell yesterday. If the reason for her rest was just poor health management, I probably wouldn't be this worried. She's not a child, so I don't usually fuss over her. However, The problem is that Lisa has recently been stalked by a strange male employee. She's modestly beautiful, so it's common for men to approach her, but this time the guy is particularly persistent in troubling her. Apparently, he always approaches her when she leaves work, follows her around, and has even sent expensive brand items to her home after figuring out where she lives. She's been a great help to me in various ways, so I want to do something for her. However, as the CEO, I can't just focus on that. Thinking about today's schedule, I decided to start working at the desk in the center of the room. I began organizing some documents and writing on those that needed filling out, but within a few minutes, my cell phone started ringing. Just as I was getting focused, this interruption came. I made a grim face and looked at the phone screen. The caller was a man of my age. He works in the sales department of a major corporate client, but lately, he's been calling me frequently, which is troubling. Again, unlike your company, I don't have time to waste, you know. Don't be so stiff. I'm your friend, right? This man, Ethan, on the phone, was my middle school classmate. I became friends with him, who was a delinquent back then, after I lectured him, and he oddly found me to be a reliable guy. Since then, we've continued this relationship, though he's a bit lax when it comes to company rules. Ethan's company manufactures gaming hardware and is a major company known to many. However, he's loved by people of all ages at his company and often makes these personal calls. I know I should lecture him properly at some point, but it seems he has a clear purpose today. Ethan, a big and friendly guy, is liked by everyone, but he has a habit of repeating the same story endlessly when he has a serious problem. So it's obvious. By the way, about the old lady in the neighborhood, the topic he brought up is one I've heard several times, so I already know the punchline. The old lady got a bad back and couldn't walk, so you carried her home on your back, and you were almost late for work, right? That's right. How did you know? I've heard the same story 5 times now. You must be mentally prepared by now. If you have a problem, just spit it out. Expressing my irritation, I spoke sharply, and he fell silent within a. After a moment, Ethan seemed ready and started talking about his problem. Apparently, he's having a tough time with a new supervisor at his workplace. This supervisor constantly belittles Ethan for being physically skilled but intellectually lacking and for being inferior to others because he's a middle school dropout. Ethan added that since he mentioned his educational background during his introduction, the supervisor's attitude has worsened. It seems the insults aren't just about Ethan. The supervisor also belittles his family, saying things like his parents must be worthless for raising a failure, and he'd like to see what kind of upbringing they gave. That's tough. Being a middle school dropout myself, I've experienced similar insults, but in Ethan's case, it's pretty severe. Those words could have broken a weaker person. I used to be a delinquent, so I think it's my fault I couldn't pursue further education. I've come to terms with it. But when it comes to my parents, I can't tolerate it, and I hate it. Got it. Let's meet at our usual pub tonight. I'll listen to the details there. I'll be waiting with beer and snacks like always. Thanks. Honestly, I'm quite busy with work, but this is for a friend. I'll have to work through my break to make time. That day, after somehow finishing my work, I headed to the usual pub. In the chilly night air, I opened the door and entered the establishment. Hey, over here. Looking around inside, I spotted Ethan. He was waving at me from a corner table. Thanks for coming. As I said on the phone, I've ordered food and drinks for us. Approaching him, I saw several empty beer mugs on the table. Tonight's on me, so eat and drink whatever you like. Of course, my time as a CEO isn't cheap, you know. Yeah, I know. We bantered lightly and started with a beer. Savoring the beer, I looked at Ethan. Ethan is straightforward, or simple, depending on how you look at it. Spending time talking with him is always comfortable because it doesn't require pondering complex matters. But I wasn't here just for small talk today, so I focused and stared at him intently. He seemed usual, but I could sense a hint of tension. "So, what's this about? You wanted to discuss something with me, right?" With that, I carefully observed his expressions and reactions as the conversation progressed. "Well, actually," Ethan began, scratching his head and looking troubled. The harassing supervisor Ethan was dealing with was a man in his 30s named Mike, who had a wife named Linda. I was surprised to learn this because I also knew Linda. "He's married, huh?" I remembered her well from our school days when she often interfered with conversations I had with Ethan. She came from a wealthy family, always dressed in brand-name clothes, and was a woman of model-like appearance. Mike, her husband, seemed to be using his wife's wealth, wearing brand-name clothes, shoes, and watches. Not only does he target people with lower educational backgrounds, but he also goes after those he perceives as poor. It's tough. Ethan is mentally strong, so he seems okay for now, but such workplace occurrences are definitely not good. The real problem seemed to be with the other employees. Some of the more timid ones had apparently started seeing a doctor due to the harassment from their supervisor. The fact that Ethan is troubled by others' issues rather than his own really shows what a good person he has always been. I remember back in middle school how he became the leader of the delinquents, unable to refuse those who were outcasts. I was a member of the school discipline committee back then, and the time I tried to set him on the right path led to quite a commotion. It's a nostalgic story, but reminiscing should be saved for another time. You were close with President Smith of our company, right? Mr. Smith, a good but stubborn and proud man, might be more receptive to you bringing up the issue. That's true. Since our companies have dealings, I'll subtly bring it up. We do have various transactions and owe a lot to each other. That's a relief. Man, I'm glad I can handle these kinds of things alone. Seeing the problem possibly getting resolved, Ethan's face brightened up, and he enthusiastically began eating the snacks on the table. That's my share, you know. Don't sweat the small stuff. We can just order more. Shrugging, I grabbed the menu to refill our diminishing snacks. I ordered a hearty dish since I hadn't had dinner yet, and we updated each other on recent happenings. A few minutes later, while savoring the hamburger that was served, Ethan started a conversation saying, "By the way," and began talking about his plans for the coming weeks. Apparently, he was going to participate in a surfing competition overseas in a few months. It was an amateur event, so the skill level wasn't demanding, but he invited me to come and watch if I was free. The sea is beautiful, and you can see fish swimming even in the shallow waters. Pretty cool, huh? It's a tempting invitation, but it depends on my work schedule. As intriguing as it was, I couldn't easily commit considering my company's needs. Always the serious one. Well, you're the CEO, so I guess it can be helped. It was a crucial time for the company's growth, so I needed to carefully plan my schedule in consultation with Lisa. Months later, I didn't know if I could make it, but miraculously my schedule cleared up, and I was able to go support Ethan. Lisa, looking tired from the stalker issue, was also invited, and we boarded the same flight. We took a different flight from Ethan and planned to meet at the venue. After hours of travel, I was surprised to find Ethan had a lot of fans at the competition site. Who knew he was so popular? I always thought of Ethan as just an average-looking guy, but in swimwear, he looked quite different. His well-toned muscles probably appealed to those who liked that type. Every move he made was met with cheers. So, not wanting to monopolize a friend, after a brief greeting, I spent time strolling along the beach until the competition started. Just watching the beautiful sea with fish swimming was a surprisingly good change of pace. While enjoying the popsicle Lisa bought for me, I noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was Linda, whom Ethan had mentioned a few months back. I hadn't seen her since graduation, but remembered her clearly for her model-like beauty. I wondered why she was here. As I gazed, puzzled, she seemed to notice me as well. It seems she remembered me too, as she quickly approached. "Why are you here, a dropout and a poor man?" Linda greeted me with words that would normally irritate anyone, but she was always like this in middle school, so I remained calm. I admit I was poor, but people don't stay the same forever, right? A guy like you, who used to hang out with the delinquent Ethan, can't possibly have a decent life. You're probably just putting on airs or want a trip abroad by some fluke, right? Linda was truly the epitome of arrogance. Ever since our school days, she seemed to find satisfaction only in looking down on others. She probably believes that everyone who dropped out of school leads a worthless life. Sighing, I held back an agitated Lisa with a gesture and addressed Linda. "What brings you here, then?" Linda, whose family was wealthy, used to travel abroad frequently on her parents' money even during our student days. Asking if it was the same case this time, it turned out my guess wasn't off the mark. "I'm on vacation, funded by Daddy's money. It's the privilege of a rich daughter to travel abroad easily." It baffled me how she could be so arrogant using not her own money but her father's. I couldn't comprehend her way of thinking. It's her father who's remarkable, not Linda herself. "Well, that's great. Your father is impressive," I said honestly, but she didn't seem to understand my words accurately. "Of course, now that you get it, disappear from my sight before your poverty rubs off on me." Puffing up her chest, she waved her hand dismissively as if to shoo me away. Talking to her any longer would only sour my mood. I thought of leaving with Lisa. But just then, Lisa exclaimed, "Oh, no," and looked shocked. I think she's the wife of the man who's been stalking me." Hearing this, I couldn't help but stare intently at Linda. Normally, such a stare might anger her, but it seemed Linda had something more pressing on her mind. She glared at Lisa with a fierce expression. "What's with this woman? Don't say such rude things just because you're a bit cute. My husband would never approach another woman. No, I'm sure. He showed me a photo of his wife." There was no doubt about whose words to believe. I stepped forward to shield Lisa from Linda. "Your husband seems to be causing trouble for my Lisa. Do you have any idea about this?" "I already told you, no. I don't have anything to talk about with someone like you, at the bottom of the social ladder." Linda, angered, started to walk away. I knew I had to be careful not to jump to conclusions. Although long talks with Linda tend to become confrontational, it's essential to confirm facts before acting. "Okay, show me a photo of your husband. If it's a misunderstanding, I'll apologize properly and do anything you say." So I deliberately humbled myself. Doing anything she said seemed to appeal to her. Reluctantly, but complying, she showed me the phone screen. "I can't believe I have to do this. Here, this is my husband." I thought it odd how she referred to her own husband, but ignored it to avoid complicating things. Lisa confirmed with a nod, "That's the man who's been stalking me." "What? You have a grudge against my husband? Trying to defame him? Handing around dropouts? You must be no good either. Don't get too carried away, or I'll write bad things about you on social media and make your life hell." Considering the extreme things Linda started saying, I remembered the stalker's characteristics Lisa had described. I began listing them to Linda. "Does your husband have a habit of dropping his gaze before he starts stalking?" "What? Yes. But how do you know that? And when he wipes sweat, he first checks if his handkerchief is clean, right?" "That's true." But, although Linda didn't explicitly affirm it, her reactions made it clear I wasn't off the mark. After listing about 3 more characteristics that only someone close would know, she collapsed to the ground. "No way, I don't believe it. My husband." Lisa, seemingly feeling pity, whispered to me so that Linda couldn't hear. "Also, The man stalking me seems to be causing trouble for your friend Ethan as well. Just a few days ago, he boasted about punishing a young subordinate named Ethan. Lisa, emotionally drained from everything, knew Ethan was my friend but had forgotten to report this to me. I never imagined that the dots would connect like this. But in a way, it was fortunate that everything was coming to light here. I extended a hand to the collapsed Linda. If you have even a shred of conscience, can you help us out? What do you want me to do? Her wary gaze fixed on me, but she seemed too drained to reject me as she did before because of my dropout status. You'd want to clear up what your husband is doing, right? Help us, and we'll help you. Hesitant, Linda took my hand. Her arrogance aside, she seemed to genuinely love her husband. So she wanted to clarify the situation. I wasn't keen on cooperating with her due to our past, but it was necessary now. Her presence would be vital for what was to come. Linda and Mike were apparently on separate activities at the time. Mike was touring tourist spots, and they were supposed to meet up after the surfing competition. We quickly started devising a plan to uncover the truth before then. Mike appears to be quite capable at his job and is known to be a sharp individual. Additionally, he's the type to be on high alert, so there's a chance he would evade a straightforward conversation. Therefore, we needed to approach him in an unexpected manner. While brainstorming, a call came through on my phone. It was from an employee at the company, needing clarification on something. Mr. Anderson, I'm a bit confused about something. Can I ask you about it, since I can't reach anyone else? It's about when you helped us with our work. That matter. I had once helped with regular employee tasks due to a staffing shortage, and they wanted to clarify something about that. After answering a few questions and hanging up, I noticed Linda staring at me. You were talking so authoritatively, like you're some company president. It's not like I actually am. Linda looked skeptical, but Lisa's nod confirmed it, leaving her speechless. Then Linda bombarded Lisa with questions about the company's name, size, and employee count. After hearing the answers, Linda seemed to finally accept the truth. You're the president of a large corporation. Want to see my business card? When I showed her my business card, she seemed to finally believe it wasn't a lie. The world is full of unbelievable things. Maybe I should buy a lottery ticket now. Right now, you sound incredibly naive. While I understand the sentiment that good things might follow, her words made her sound unintelligent. My becoming a president was due to my own efforts, not mere chance. Realizing what she said, Linda blushed slightly and retorted, "Shut up." Fine. Anyway, we've got a riff plan, so help us out. I get it. Just because you're an old acquaintance, don't order me around. Her not protesting about being directed by a dropout might be a sign of growth. That's why I explained my plan to Linda. And together with Lisa, we ironed out the details and revised our strategy. Later, watching the competition, Ethan performed well in the surfing semifinals, setting a good record. However, despite his best efforts, he narrowly missed out in the final. After congratulating Ethan on his efforts, I explained the situation to him and asked for his cooperation. As the evening sun began to set, the surfing competition tents were being folded and the audience started to leave. We continued to wait for Mike. Interestingly, upon seeing Ethan being fawned over by fans, Linda looked perplexed and offered him a sort of apology. Her inability to be straightforward led her to say, "I thought you were just a muscle-brained dropout," which hardly sounded like an apology, but I considered it progress nonetheless. I didn't want to tease Linda and ruin the somewhat positive atmosphere we had managed to create. If Ethan had been bothered, I wouldn't have been ready to forgive, but he seemed imperturbed. "Well, thanks for apologizing," he said, easily forgiving Linda. This lightened the mood among us. Ethan's straightforward and unburdened character was truly a blessing in this situation. While we were exchanging these interactions, Mike arrived. He looked like an ordinary person, but knowing he was the one troubling Ethan and Lisa made me angry. So, I decided to start acting as if I were arguing with Linda. You've always been like this, looking down on people for being dropouts. Of course, dropouts are all at the bottom of humanity. That's what my father always said. They're just meant to be bossed around and work for others. Mike, witnessing our argument, looked bewildered and glanced over at us. That's when Lisa stepped in front of Mike. He seemed surprised to see her, a woman supposed to be back in America, here, abroad. However, he soon had bigger concerns. Lisa spoke with Mike, who then exclaimed loudly, "That man is President Anderson, who deals with my company." As planned, we revealed my identity to make Mike anxious. He tried to intervene, sweating profusely. But then Ethan appeared and addressed him. "Mike, what are you doing here? Did you come to see my competition?" "Competition? Why is Ethan here?" "Actually, there was a surfing competition here today. I did pretty well and even gained some fans. I'll treat you all today to say thanks." Mike seemed quite confused as he listened to Ethan's rapid-fire explanation. Seeing a new side of someone he had looked down upon, he might have thought he was dreaming. Fans for dropout Ethan. Competing. Impossible. His feelings were understandable. Anyone would be overwhelmed in such a situation. However, if he were in a state to make rational judgments, we wouldn't be able to draw out his true intentions. Therefore, we needed to keep him in the state of confusion a while longer. I faced Linda, focusing on our act of arguing. I continued to act angry, raising my voice as if in a ray-all argument. "You've always said I was trash for hanging out with delinquents in middle school, right? I won't let you forget that. Do you really enjoy labeling people so much? Despite not knowing much about Ethan and the others, you sure made a lot of assumptions. All delinquents are worthless. It's clear without thinking. Birds of a feather flock together. Associating with bottom dwellers proves your poor judgment." I was getting heated up, and it was becoming hard to tell if I was acting or speaking my mind. Remembering high school days, I felt my temper rising and knew it was time to cool down. Sensing the right moment, I caught Mike intervening and sent a signal to Linda. "Wait, Linda. That man is President Anderson, with whom we do business. Don't yell like that, Jack. That's so typical of a dropout. My husband has never raised his voice over petty squabbles." Linda, catching my cue, gave a small nod. "My husband is a division manager at a major corporation, quite different from you, a dropout, huh?" Hearing this, I delivered the critical line. "Well, he's getting fired tomorrow, you know." "What?" Linda, of course, was acting, not genuinely shocked. However, Mike, hearing this, was visibly surprised. "What?" The man, Mike, hearing the same words from his wife, seemed frozen, unable to comprehend the situation. Feeling the need to press on, I explained the reasons in rapid succession. "You've been berating your subordinates and exerting excessive pressure on them, it seems. We've already looked into it. Since your company has closed dealings with mine, I'm quite familiar with the internal matters. Your husband is likely to be fired soon. While it's true that we have closed business dealings, I wouldn't normally know about an ordinary employee. But suggesting the possibility was enough for now." "That can't be true, really. It's not a lie. I heard he's been stalking my Lisa, sending her expensive gifts and following her after work. We have evidence, so the police might get involved." Having finished the act, I looked at Linda and Mike. Mike, breaking into a sweat, said nothing and, grabbing Linda's arm, ran off. I don't know what happened to them after that. Despite feeling that we couldn't just leave them be, we ended up losing track of them while following. Even when I tried calling on my cell phone, I couldn't get through, leaving me worried for the rest of the day. But the next day, on our way to the airport with Ethan and Lisa, Linda finally contacted me. Her tearful voice informed me that their discussion hadn't gone well. "I've decided to divorce Mike." Linda hadn't revealed that our argument was a ruse, and it seemed she had been written off by her husband. "Are you sure?" "Not telling the truth. He said he never really loved me, that he married me only because of my father's pressure. He thought being with a wealthy girl would be beneficial. Well, I guess I never really saw people for who they are. It's my own fault." Though I never liked Linda much, I couldn't kick someone when they were down. I gripped my phone silently, unable to find the right words. Switching places with me, Ethan seemed to have something he wanted to say. After asking for my permission, he borrowed my cell phone to speak with Linda. "Hey, Linda, remember how you used to brag about making fancy cakes in middle school?" I remembered it well. It was the day we made cakes in home economics class. Linda brought luxury fruits, truffles, caviar, and other unnecessary ingredients, gaining the attention of other students. "That happened, yeah, so what? You ate them in front of us, saying we poor people couldn't afford such things. So, treat us next time." Even Ethan, often considered a muscle brain, must have known that his words were said in sarcasm. However, he brought up that topic deliberately to encourage Linda. "All right, I don't know if it'll make amends, but okay, you've always been so positive. Even in middle school, I was probably just jealous and acted out." It seemed even someone like Linda was swayed by Ethan's genuine nature. People like Ethan, who can become friends with others without any ulterior motives or calculations, are rare and valuable. As a CEO, frequently encountering the hidden facets of people makes the task of building new relationships somewhat daunting. Having a friend like Ethan was indeed fortunate. We returned to our home country a bit more lighthearted. Linda started preparing for her divorce. However, it seems Mike continued to linger around Lisa. While he apparently didn't speak to her, his stalking behavior continued. Despite being served with a restraining order by the police, he seemingly hadn't learned his lesson and continued sending gifts. Aware of his superior's disgraceful behavior, Ethan began to reflect on his own actions. Regretting calling me in violation of company rules, he now restrains himself from doing so. Even fundamentally good people can fall astray when those around them are too lenient. But both Linda and Ethan managed to turn things around. Therefore, it stands to reason that Mike, too, should be able to make a fresh start. However, there's still no sign of him changing his behavior. Weeks later, as we were busy welcoming new employees, Lisa came to me with a troubled face. Apparently, Mike's stalking hadn't ceased. He had been quiet initially, but recently started approaching her again. I was astonished that Mike still had the energy to continue his stalking behavior after everything that had happened overseas. Perhaps he didn't understand the gravity of his situation. Irritated, I told Lisa to contact the police if Mike showed up again. That day, after finishing work as usual, I didn't expect to encounter Mike. As I was about to escort Lisa to the nearest station for her safety, I spotted him. He was standing behind some trees near our company and started running towards us as we approached. "Please, talk to your company about me. It's all a misunderstanding. I need to explain." Lisa looked scared, so I stepped in between them. "If I get fired, I'll become a laughingstock. Please, convince Mr. Anderson. Mr. Smith at my company is stubborn. He won't listen to anyone's opinion." His pathetic demeanor was evident as he approached me, smiling nervously. "Mr. Anderson, I haven't done anything wrong. I don't know what Ethan told you, but you're being deceived. It's true that people can make rational decisions when cornered." In a calm state of mind, he would have realized that his actions would only lead to bad outcomes, but the fear of getting fired was driving him to foolish acts. I sighed internally and addressed Mike. "Why continue sending expensive gifts to Lisa if it's all a misunderstanding? And those gifts, they are reportedly stolen from other female employees. aren't they? I didn't. It's a misunderstanding. I wouldn't do such a thing. Before returning from overseas, I had called Mike's company, and they had conducted some investigations. What I'm speaking about now is the truth that was uncovered as a result of the investigations. The team was competent, and by the time we returned to America, many things had come to light, which was a relief. You repeat troubling behavior when drinking, forcibly invite favorite employees for drinks, create havoc in bars, and get banned. Is all this a misunderstanding too? It turned out Mike was like a dustbin. Hit it, and all sorts of dirt comes out. Even though my claim of his imminent firing was a bluff, the newly discovered misconduct indeed started real discussions about his termination. President Smith of his company was exasperated by Mike's behavior. Please, don't involve Lisa or me any further. If you can't accept this, I'll call the police right here. As I glared at him, Mike's face paled. He didn't expect his misdeeds to be known so precisely. Yet, he kept making excuses, trembling. I haven't done anything wrong. Ethan is just a muscle-brained dropout. And I thought the expensive items were better suited for a beautiful young woman than an older woman. Considering his attitude towards these actions as normal, he must have a significantly distorted sense of ethics. It's possible that throughout his life, there was no one to reprimand him or correct his behavior. Likely, he never encountered a situation that forced him to confront and correct his mistakes. I'm just a victim here. I did nothing wrong. Why should I be fired for doing the right thing? He shouted, red-faced with anger. People at the bottom of society aren't much use alive. Wouldn't young, beautiful women appreciate brand items more than old ladies? Is education and appearance that important to you? Of course it is. That's common sense. He probably won't change his perspective. His convictions are so deeply ingrained that no one's words can reach him. Feeling a sense of emptiness, I urged Lisa to leave and turned our backs on him. Let's go. It's better to stay inside the company for a while before heading home. Okay. Mike continued to rant, but we ignored him. After spending some time in the company's break room, we saw that he had left. Afterward, Mike apparently resorted to desperate measures. He tried offering money to those he had troubled, and conversely, he threatened them to prevent them from speaking out against him. However, once Linda became aware of this, she was furious, leading to constant marital disputes. Eventually, he was fired and left the company. The divorce proceedings with Linda progressed, and they officially separated. After being fired, Mike drifted through various jobs before moving to a rural area where he knew no one. Rumors suggest that after moving to a new location, he continued to struggle, eventually resorting to crime out of desperation and landing in prison. After Mike was terminated, Ethan and his colleagues felt a sense of relief. A compassionate and gentle superior took Mike's place, restoring peace and stability to their daily routines. The employees who had been frequenting the hospital have regained their health. Following her divorce from Mike, Linda seems to be forming a positive relationship with Ethan. Their reconciliation began abroad when she apologized, and since then, they have been spending more time together. Lisa and I also often spend our days off with them, leading to regular double dates. To be honest, since that incident, I've developed quite an interest in Lisa, but as it's my first experience with love, I'm uncertain about how to proceed. So, I've been seeking advice from Linda, who has been unexpectedly caring and sisterly, and I'm doing my best. Having become softer and less arrogant, Linda now feels more like a friend to me. I wish I could show my middle school self how things have turned out. Our company, now home to many new employees, is also moving in a positive direction. Currently, I'm in the process of selecting a ring for a proposal, hoping that goes well too. Once the proposal is accepted, I plan to have a wedding with Lisa and start building a happy, large family.